Hi everybody and welcome to The Good, The Bad and The Bitcoin. My name is Dirk, I've been a trader and investor for 25 years and my mission on this channel is to equip you with the tools to become a more professional trader and investor. With the price of Bitcoin just recently surpassing 30,000 US dollars again, I want to talk today about the number one question I get asked when talking to friends and family about Bitcoin. Dirk, do you think that there will be a new bull market in 2024? And what is your price target for Bitcoin in 2024? So in this video, I want to show you why I think we are seeing right now the beginning of a super bull market and what my price target for Bitcoin within this bull market is going to be for 2024 and 2025. Is it 100,000? Is it 300,000? Or maybe even 1 million US dollars? Or maybe in a surprise twist, I actually think Bitcoin is going to zero? Stay tuned, watch the video until the end and find out. Welcome back, good to see you. Before we start, please remember that everything I'm going to say or show you in this video is my own personal opinion, based on my findings from technical, sentiment and fundamental analysis. It is no investment advice, so please use this information as inspiration for doing your own due diligence. Also, I do not use any affiliate links to try to sell you products. My payment is that you leave me a like, subscribe to the channel and leave me a comment on what your Bitcoin price target for 2024 is. Bitcoin undergoes a so-called halving event every 4 years or 210,000 blocks, where the reward for finding a new block is cut in half. This happened the last time in May 2020 and will happen again in April of 2024. These halving events were in the past the kick-off for huge bull runs that always ended in Bitcoin reaching new all-time highs. From an investor's point of view, these correlations, in this case between the Bitcoin halvings and the price development of the following months, are exactly the thing we are looking for, because there's a chance that the price of Bitcoin will behave again like this after the next halving in 2024. However, to double check if we are not just suffering from wishful thinking, there are also other things we should take into consideration. In my opinion, just looking at charts of Bitcoin is not enough, because there's more going on behind the curtains than most beginner traders might suspect. If we, for example, compare a chart of Bitcoin with a chart of the S&P 500, the most important stock index in the world, we can see that most of the time both assets actually move in the same direction. Yes, there are of course times where one will outperform the other, but generally speaking, it seems to be obvious that when one goes up, the other one will also go up. This is due to the fact that the majority of market participants perceive Bitcoin and the stock markets as so-called risk-on assets. Risk-on assets are bought when market participants are willing to accept more risk in exchange for the chance of a higher return on their investments. In times like this, they will especially buy stocks, buy cryptocurrencies and sell the US dollar. Now, this of course goes against the fact that Bitcoin was actually designed as a hedge against the classical financial markets. But as traders and investors, we have to live with the truth that this is not yet perceived by the majority of market participants. Since the US stock market is still huge in comparison to Bitcoin, it is also safe to say that the S&P 500 influences the price of Bitcoin more than the other way around. Knowing this means that we should also form an opinion about what the stock markets are going to do in 2024 and 2025 in order to form an opinion about a price target on Bitcoin. What influences the stock market prices long term the most? Correct. Interest rates, inflation, GDP growth, or in short, the economic picture and forecast. Now, the US and most other countries are currently still in an environment of high inflation. you probably have noticed the increase of prices on your weekly grocery shopping routine as well over the past 2 years. The US Federal Reserve reacted to this high inflation environment by drastically hiking US interest rates from 0.25% to now 5.25%, resulting in turmoil on the worldwide financial markets. If you follow the media a bit on what is expected in terms of economic growth for 2024, you will quickly stumble upon stories of recession, hyperinflation, and all kinds of horror stories that basically everything will go to ruin. And of course, adding ongoing and new wars to these equations result in a lot of uncertainty. However, if we look into the past to compare what the US stock markets did in times where we also had an inflation rate north of 6%, we can see that almost every time inflation was higher than 6% and then started to come down again, we also saw the low of the stock markets. So why should it be different this time? In addition to that, with the US interest rates now actually being higher than the inflation rate, the Fed seems to have stopped raising them any further for now. This is a so-called terminal rate, and if we look into the past, we can see that once this interest rate plateau was reached, it was just a matter of time until interest rates started falling again. On average, these plateaus lasted around 7 months. The current plateau was reached in September 2023, when the Fed left the interest rates unchanged. 7 months from September 2023 into the future is April 2024. April 2024, Bitcoin halving, plus potentially falling interest rates again could lead to a market participants massively shifting back from risk off to risk on assets. That, in my opinion, could be a recipe for a super bull market in crypto starting in 2024. You heard it already with my last sentence. I think the next halving could lead to a new massive bull market that actually most market participants are still underestimating. If I compare how the market reacted the last 3 times after the halvings, there are actually 3 different possible price targets. If the market behaves like it did after the 2020 halving, the target would be $100,000. If it behaves like it did after the 2016 halving, the target is $300,000. If it even behaves after it did after the 2012 halving, the target is $1 million. These price targets have to be taken with a grain of salt, of course, because they cannot take into account so-called black swan events, such as the COVID disease or also the gigantic scams of FTX and Terra Luna in 2022. However, I think it's also more important to not become too fixated on certain price targets, but more on when after the halving new all-time highs were reached. This happened between 12 and 18 months after the halvings. So a wise strategy would be here to slowly start scaling out of the crypto markets again in the time period of 1 to 1.5 years after the halving. If you enjoyed watching this video, please support me by leaving a like, subscribing to the channel and sharing your thoughts on the price of Bitcoin for 2024 and 2025 in the comments. Until we see each other again, happy investing.